Welcome, everyone. We'll wait until everybody kind of pops on. So glad you can attend our last session of our virtual games. So I'll introduce myself first. I'm Cindy Hausner. I'm the director of Great Lakes Adaptive Sports Association, and I'm also the games director for Great Lakes Games. Unfortunately, we're doing them virtual versus live, but hope to be back in 2021. And for those of you may have heard me say this, but normally our weather has not been the best. And today it is beautiful, sunny, low wind, and 62 and no humidity. So next year we'll be live. Welcome to today's session, which is Girls Guided by Sports. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors, which you see on our screen. And just to go over a few housekeeping items. You will be muted during the session, except when you have questions. So if you have a question, which we want this to be an interactive session, we hope that just put in the Q&A your name and we'll unmute you. So we also know that we have a number of coaches that are also on this session. So we look to them also to share their feedback, their stories, their questions, their advice, along with our speakers. And we'd like, please use the chat function. Make sure that it states attendees and panelists, because we want to know who's out there. So, you know, put hi, I'm from wherever you're at, and if you're an athlete, if you're a coach. So at this time, I'd like to announce our speakers. We have Amanda Mccrory, who is a 3-time US Paralympian and 7-time medalist in track. And so everybody, Amanda, and then we have Amy Day, who is also a wheelchair track Paralympian from Sydney, and she's also GLASA's head wheelchair track coach. Just a little introduction. Not only are these women athletes, they are intelligent, caring, and strong, and I get to say that because I know both of them. And they really truly give back to their sport and their community. Both are involved with Adaptive Sports US, which is now Move United. They both are strong role models. Amy is, in addition to being a coach, is also a mom of 2 wonderful kids. And Amanda is also involved with the Chicago Marathon Mentoring Program. And I know they have other attributes, but I wanted to share that not only are the athlete, but all the other attributes that they have. So I will let them start kind of telling their story, both their challenges and maybe or their successes and some challenges that they may have had along the way. Okay, so take it away. I don't know who wants to start.
I'm going to start it.
Okay,
you go ahead.
Okay, Amanda's starting.
All right, hi. My name is Amanda Mccrory. As Cindy said, I am a 3-time Paralympian. I'm originally from Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, and I moved out to Champaign, Illinois in 2004 to be a part of the University of Illinois wheelchair basketball program, actually. My sophomore year of college, I got bribed into doing a marathon. I was a dual sport athlete when I came out here, but I was focusing on wheelchair basketball more than racing. So I got bribed into doing a marathon. I didn't love it, but it turned out that I was pretty good at it, and I immediately got talked into doing another marathon, and kept working on long distance racing training, and then went to Beijing in 2008 for my first Paralympic Games. So I've since gone to Beijing, London, and Rio, won 7 medals, including gold in the 5K, and I am, yeah, that's it. Currently training and racing here.
Okay.
And I am Amy Day. I started with wheelchair basketball as well in about 1994, 95, and I'm pretty sure I was bribed to try track as well, which
always starts with the bribe.
Familiar. Yeah. A lot of
it was the briber.
Yeah. But I totally loved it and just kind of took off with that. Had opportunities to travel because of that, and ended up making the Paralympic team in 2000. I currently coach wheelchair track with GLASA and road racing, and pretty much whatever anybody needs help with, I try to jump on and help them with that. So.
All right. I'll start out, and I would encourage everybody on here to ask questions, because again, we do want this to be interactive. But for both of you, how did you balance school and training? Because I mean, it's a lot.
It is definitely a lot. And coming to the University of Illinois was a big lesson in time management for me. Prior to moving to Illinois, I had my own coach in Pennsylvania. And I would train mostly during the spring and summer track season after school. And my parents were great about encouraging me to be independent, but also keeping me on task with things. Reminding me about bedtime, reminding me to get homework done, reminding me to eat healthy. And then all of a sudden I moved to Illinois. I was living in a dorm. My parents were hundreds of miles away, and I had to figure it all out on my own. And on top of that, as a dual sport athlete, I was working out 2 to 3 times a day on top of taking classes. And so I had to learn very quickly that even though lots of my friends who were not athletes were able to stay up late and sleep in late and go get cheeseburgers from McDonald's at midnight, and do all of those college things, that I had to be really good about scheduling my time, keeping up with my homework, keeping up with exams, and also making sure that I had time for training on top of that, because that's what I wanted to do. I came to Illinois because I wanted to be an athlete, but I knew that I couldn't stay here unless I was successful academically as well. So it was a good lesson in figuring out how to balance all of those things, and also be responsible with my time.
Okay. How about you, Amy?
It was a little bit different because I was still in high school. I didn't have to do all of that by myself. But my main struggle was because I was in high school, friends were so important to me that I would try to just hurry through practices. And it wasn't until I had the opportunity to travel, to stay at the training centers or stay with adult athletes that already had training programs, that I was able to focus more. So being at home was a much bigger distraction. And when I got to travel to Georgia, I got to stay with a couple athletes in this little home in the underneath a basketball court. I don't even know if it's still there, but it's in Warm Springs, Georgia. And my friend Sherry and Jesse and a bunch of us would kind of come and go from there. And that was really nice during the summers to be able to focus that way. But at home, when you've got friends and you're in high school, it's really tough. So traveling, getting out of my comfort zone was how I did that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think coming to Illinois and seeing how hard all of the other athletes were working, and seeing how they balanced their time was a really good lesson for me in figuring things out and making that learning curve a little bit less steep.
So there's a number of high school students that are on this today. And I guess I would ask both of you, being the only female athlete in your high school that has a physical disability, what motivated you to compete in sports and train, and or did you have any challenges because you were the only female athlete with a disability?
I had pretty low self-esteem in high school. I didn't value my opinions and ideas, and sport through GLASA actually helped me come out of that, but it didn't translate to school yet for me. And it wasn't as inclusive, I think, as it is today. My high school team did offer to let me be on the track team, but just my own self, I couldn't overcome those obstacles. But continued sports and training and traveling, that gave me the empowerment to improved my self-esteem, I think. So I did not participate, but did you, Amanda? I don't remember.
No, and I think it was kind of similar for me too. One of the big reasons I didn't participate was because I couldn't. My school still had a gravel track. And I don't know if you've ever tried to push a racing chair on a gravel track, but it doesn't go very well. And so I didn't have the option to be a part of the team. But I do really think that starting out in sports, when I was a kid, I started when I was 11. One of the biggest things that I got from it when I first started out was just meeting a whole new group of people and learning more about myself and my body and how I could be more independent and all the things that I could do by myself. It was the first time that I had ever seen someone in a wheelchair drive a car or have a family or go to college, was when I started with that sports program. And so it was more, at the beginning, it was more just like me learning about what it was like to be a person with a physical disability and what my life could look like moving forward. And then it kind of gradually grew into something that was more about the sports side of things and the competitive side of things.
I 100% agree with you. I had a very similar experience. And one other thing with that, with the training and the meeting of people, it really taught me to enjoy that moment because we've worked so hard to get there. I was very happy to have learned that lesson.
To later.
Yeah,
growing up, who were your role models, male or female, just out of curiosity?
Man.
You know, that's a hard one. We didn't have TV growing up. My dad didn't want the influence of outside media kind of making us impure. I don't know. But I'd say once I started training into sports, I'd have to say Jean Driscoll. You know, you were pretty close with her, and then traveling to U of I, she was somebody that I looked up to. She was very focused. I wanted to be like that. So I'd say Jean.
That's a good,
This is really funny. So I think even having, like, growing up with TV and media, it was so unusual to see an athlete with a disability, especially a female athlete with a disability, get any media attention whatsoever, whether it was, because Amy and I are old. This is before the internet. So
Yeah.
we couldn't just search online for like sports programs or results from races or any of that. And so I was really reliant upon what was on TV, what was in newspapers, if there was anything in magazines. And this is when Jean was having a lot of success in Boston. And so she was one for me. And I also remember reading about Leanne Shannon, the youngest gold medalist in the 100-meter, and those being really big things, and seeing like two very different people from very different backgrounds doing very different things, but still having a lot of success. And so I latched really tightly onto both of those as role models.
Okay, great. And for those of you that don't know, I was actually Amy's first coach, and I was also Jean's. So it's kind of funny, and I learned so much from both of you guys. So it's kind of fun to hear that. Just looking. Both of you are very confident, come out very confident, but what weren't you confident in? And like, what type of doubts did you have, especially maybe in your younger days during high school, you know, just coming into college, just what type of doubts? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to put myself back there. High school was a long time ago. And one of the things that I try to do today is to just like focus on the positive, you know, and not let those negative things come back in. I'm gonna need a minute. Do you have any that are popping up, Amanda?
So I definitely, we talked a lot about just confidence and how through sports, both of us learned to be more independent. And I think that really that side of things carried over, and it helped me be more confident in other areas of my life as well. Making friends at school, and then even I think I learned some really important lessons through sport about being motivated and holding yourself accountable and working hard and all of those internal things. And especially as an athlete in an individual sport, you can see racing is cool because you see a direct payoff. If you show up at practice every day and you train hard and you're working hard, you're going to see yourself slowly but surely get stronger and faster and find more success. And I think that those lessons really carry over into other aspects of your life. And so from that, I went to the University of Illinois. I got a degree. I lived for 5-6 years as a professional athlete and got paid to travel around the world and race marathons. I went back to school. I got a master's degree. And I was just hired as the archivist for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And so that's something that is not directly related to sport or being an athlete, but getting there, being an athlete was important in my path to getting where I am today.
So just pouring yourself all in kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing, and like those working hard, being responsible, being accountable for yourself, those lessons transfer over into every aspect of your life, into relationships with friends, with your family.
Those are exactly the same reasons that I have my children participate in sports, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there, that's why you start. You know, it's not, I'm going to start wheelchair track so that I can go to the Paralympics. It's, you want to learn those things. You want to learn the accountability. You want to learn to be a good teammate, be a good person, you know, and I think sport really does help with all of those things.
And it's amazing because it transfers over beyond that, beyond competition, national competitions, beyond the Paralympics. You learn so much about who you are as a person, and those strengths and weaknesses, and personal successes and how to set goals. All of those things carry over and are so much bigger than just going to a track meet and doing a race.
Okay, we do have a couple questions. So I've got some other talking points that we've talked about before, but we'll go with the questions. It states, here in Rockford, we have always struggled to find athletes to participate in our adaptive sport programs, especially girls. Just last year, we found and recruited 3 young ladies for our wheelchair basketball team. Hooray! It was a learning year for us in many ways, especially with our program previously being heavily male. Do you two have similar experiences to what our girls are having right now, entering into a heavy male sports program? Any advice for athletes, coaches, or parents?
Yeah, you have to be confident. You're going to be almost overly confident, I would say, is what I try to do anyway. I played on a basketball team that was co-ed, and I just always felt like, you know, if they scored 8 points, I would just do a little bit better, you know, but I think that was the competitor in me. Amanda, did you feel that way?
Hold on one second. I'm typing an answer to Pam.
Oh, I saw that.
Oh, no. Yeah, so that's tough. And as a girl, you're not expected, at least I felt I was not expected. You know, I had to be the cute one, the pretty one, the one that wasn't, and I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I felt. So I always try to just be better than the boys, try to have that confidence and beat them. And then we'll get that respect, is how my mind worked.
I also think too, as a coach or a parent, I think it's really important to encourage all athletes. But if you have girls on your team, like definitely encourage them to stay involved and to keep working. I think that a lot of times kids, girls, boys, everybody, they easily get discouraged by comparing themselves against teammates. And feeling like they are not strong enough or not fast enough or their skills aren't good enough. And I think that it's really important to keep encouraging people to stay involved. Let everyone set their own goals and really like support your athletes and support your teammates as they are like reaching those milestones and learning and getting better and getting stronger, because that in itself is huge for the confidence building and all of those things that transfer outside of sport.
Okay, great. This is an interesting question. Do you think it's more important for young girls to have a female as opposed to a male coach when starting out? Are there enough opportunities for women to coach girls?
I have never had a female coach. So I'm thinking
you. That's it. Yeah.
That's.
Where did that question come from? Can you reread it? Or the ending of it?
Shannon, can you put that back up there?
That was a really good question.
I will read it again.
Okay.
Do you think it's more important for young girls to have a female as opposed to a male coach when starting out? Are there enough opportunities for women to coach girls? And this comes from Michael in Southern California.
I don't think it's more important to have a woman. I think just somebody who is positive, that can relate, that you can vibe well with. I think each person, especially in an individual sport, if you have a coach that you don't get along with, it can ruin it for you. Even in a team sport, I know just with my children, and if they had that coach and they did not get along with it, they didn't want to participate anymore, and that's really discouraging. So I think as long as you have the coach that can relate to the kids, I think that's fine. I don't think it has to be a man or a woman more important than the other.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I also, a related point, I also don't think it is necessarily important that as a coach that you are a person with a disability or a disabled athlete as well. I think that if you can be an able-bodied coach who doesn't have any firsthand experience with wheelchair racing or with adaptive athletics, and I think it's the same thing. I think if you are open and willing to learn and listen and be supportive, then you can also be just as successful that way too.
Amanda, that's funny that you say that. That took me until 5 or 7 years ago to realize. And I actually got a job up here training high school kids privately through track, able-bodied athletes. And it was just kind of an aha moment for me. Like I've been around track my entire life. Why can't I? And that was an obstacle that I had to overcome myself. And once I did, it was really eye-opening and freeing for me as a person.
Yeah, I think we focus on that a lot. The same thing with it's better for girls to be coached by women. It's better for wheelchair athletes to be coached by other wheelchair athletes. And I really think that it's so much bigger than that. And it's so much more about just being open and supportive and willing to learn and willing to listen than anything else.
And just to I'll quickly add to it, I think sometimes too, just because you're an athlete, it doesn't matter if you have a disability, don't have a disability, but just because you're an athlete does not make you a coach. And I think that's huge. And, I think we've all seen that. Really good athletes does not necessarily make you a good coach. What about, let me see if there's any questions here. What about performance? Because what happens, when your performance is not going where you want it to go? We talked a little bit about this the other day, but what happens then? You're just, you're not making the times, you're in a rut. What pushes you through when your performance is just not what you want it?
So as an athlete, I can say that this is another one of those aspects of my life where it's been really, really important for me to have balance. I have always made sure all of my eggs weren't in one basket, so to speak. And not that I wasn't committed or dedicated to my career in athletics, but I was always in school. I worked part-time jobs. I did outreach programs. I was always doing other things. And that was really helpful for me to be able to have an opportunity to step back and focus on something else when things weren't necessarily going well. And so for like a specific example of this, I came into the London Paralympics in 2012 as the defending Paralympic champion in the 5K, as a 4-time medalist, and extremely confident. And I got thrown off my game early on. I pretty much let myself get distracted and came home without any medals. Was assuming, based on my previous performances, that like that was just a given. This is what I do. I am 22 years old and overly confident, and I'm just going to go win a medal in every event. And coming back to Illinois after that and being able to step back a little bit from my training, think about going into a graduate program, work on some outreach programs, some mentoring stuff, really gave me a good opportunity to find success in other areas of my life, and kind of refocus my athletic goals. And once there wasn't so much pressure on it, make some changes, change up my training, and think about things in a different way, that I was able to kind of use the rest of my life to balance out my athletic life and put myself back on the right path where I wanted to be.
Okay. How about you, Amy?
I totally agree with you, but I do have a quick question for Amanda. Was that the story about how you were too focused on what other athletes were doing?
That is also part of that story.
Yeah. So would you tell that story? I thought that was really good.
Yeah. So in the first race of the 2012 Paralympics was the 5K, which I was coming in as the defending Paralympic champion. I think I may have been coming in as the current world record holder. So I was feeling really, really confident. And I had a whole race plan set up. I knew where my strengths were and that I wanted to, basically I had a whole race plan of how I was going to run the race, that was going to cater to my strengths. I was hoping to surprise some people. And right off the bat from the first lap, there was a Chinese athlete that I had never met before that had apparently studied my racing, and she pretty much glued herself to my back wheel. And so instead of going through my race the way that I had planned, I spent my entire race looking over my shoulder and under my arm to see who this girl was and what she was doing. And pretty much my entire race plan fell apart because I didn't do anything that I was supposed to do. I was just watching this athlete behind me who my assumption was hoping to throw me off by doing that. And instead of finishing in the top, it was a 10-person race and I finished 9th. And that is what threw me off of my racing for the rest of the games, is that instead of focusing on myself and the things that I could control, and the race plans that I had set up with my coach, I was instead way, way too focused on what the rest of the athletes were doing in the race, and instead trying to set my race up to counter them or react to them, instead of my strength, which was to be making those moves and forcing people to react to me. So that was a hugely important lesson that I learned.
Absolutely. And you were an experienced Paralympian at this point too, right?
Yeah, that was my second Paralympic Games. And like I said, I was already a multiple time medalist. I was a world record holder in that event. I had run it probably dozens, maybe close to 100 times at that point in my career. And I knew exactly where I wanted to be, speeds I wanted to hit, places I wanted to be in the pack. And it all fell apart in 30 seconds because I got distracted by things that I couldn't control.
I had a similar story in one of my races, and we were all warming up, and I saw this T54, completely judged her. I met her before. She was from somewhere in Europe, and you kind of look over your competition. I should not have done this, and that was the day I stopped doing that. But I judged early. And I thought, okay, I can beat her, I can beat her, just purely based on looks. Granted, I was 17, but.
It's easy to do. You think that somebody they don't look super strong, they're kind of skinny, they're little.
Oh, I got my butt beat too. So that was the last day I did that. But that's one thing I try to teach my kids. Don't judge your competitors. Don't get distracted. This is about you. Let's focus on that. Your race. Go out there and run your race.
Another question, if there aren't enough opportunities for women to coach girls, how do we rectify this situation?
You've got to stay involved.
Education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say too, the peer mentoring, you know, with the younger groups coming up, younger women, is to kind of get them excited about coaching and get them excited about the profession. I think is also I think mentoring is huge.
Mentoring, absolutely. Yeah.
I
Okay.
also think as these programs are growing, there's more collegiate programs, there's more athletes around the country that are continuing past the junior program into adult competition, whether it's recreational, elite, whatever. I think that those are great opportunities too. There's more awareness, and it's one of those things that kind of, it goes hand in hand. As the pool of athletes gets bigger, more people stay involved, longer, there's more opportunities to race. Hopefully it's one of those things that we can continue to encourage people to stay involved and then make that transition to coaching, to competing as an adult, to outreach programs to get more people involved.
And this is a question for both of you. And I know, Amy, we've had discussions, but when you're entering school, college, there's a lot. You have to keep up with your homework, and you're meeting new people, and there's new opportunities. But why would both of you as athletes tell high school girls to say, hey, you know what? Here's a great opportunity to continue on with your sport in college, and why, versus, you know, stopping at the high school level?
So just real quick, there is research to prove that student athletes perform better academically and athletically. That having that structure and that balance pushes you up. It brings you into this like culture of excellence and culture of success where you are meeting a higher baseline, and it makes you more successful and more well-rounded just overall.
I completely agree. I've had that same conversation with my daughter, who's about to, she'll be a senior this year, and we're encouraging her to continue to go on to sports. And she wants to be a doctor. I mean, that's a big, heavy school day, but I think she can do both. And I really think it helps keep her out of trouble. You know, it holds her accountable. She has to be at those practices. When you're a college athlete, typically, you get tutors, you know, and I really hope that everybody continues. You know, if you can, if there's opportunities for that, it keeps you healthier, especially if you do have a disability. Being out there, being as healthy as you can be, will give you a longer lifespan, you know?
That's where I was going next, actually, is that as a person with a disability, an active, fit lifestyle is really, really important, because you lose so much independence if you are not strong enough or fit enough to be able to transfer and get in and out of cars and to go places. Like, those things are really, really important to stay as strong as you can, to be as fit and healthy as you can. It's going to increase your quality of life. It's going to increase your lifespan. It's going to just like overall make your life better. And as an athlete, like carrying on with competition through college, and then also just staying fit and continuing to work out beyond that, even if it's just in a recreational capacity, going out on bike rides with your family. Those are really, really good habits to get into that are going to go beyond competitive athletics, even if your competitive athletic career is ending or you're moving on to other things in your life.
Okay, great answers. What about your support system, especially in an adaptive sport such as U of I with track, basketball? They're also your competitors too. So how do your teammates function both as your competitors, but then I guess the question is, or are they also your support system?
Yeah, absolutely. Both of those things are true. It's one of the huge advantages to being here at the University of Illinois is that if going to the Paralympics is a goal for you. If you want to have a highly competitive long-term career. The University of Illinois is fantastic. And one of the reasons why is there's such a big pool of athletes at all different speeds, all working as hard as they can to be as strong as they can and lift everyone else up with them. It builds that culture of excellence that I was talking about. And at the same time, like when I get into a race with my teammates, I already know that they're working hard, that they are strong, that they're consistent, and that I can trust them in the race. So I've said many times that even if it's frustrating, if I get beat by any athletes, particularly an athlete on my team, I know how hard they work. Like I know that they're finding success because they've been working so hard and putting so much time and effort and dedication into that sport. And I get to see it every day. So it's really, really hard to be upset about that. And it gives me motivation to continue chasing them to get stronger. And it just moves all of us up to the next level. It also puts me as an athlete in a really cool position where if I am in an event with my teammates, in a 5K, in a 1500, in a longer event where there's an opportunity to work together a little bit, we can set up, we can kind of set up a plan and work a little bit as a team. And the only way that works is if you have absolute complete trust in your competitors and your teammates. And just over the length of time we spent training together, we've been able to build that. So I had a really cool experience in Rio in 2016, where before the 1500, I sat down with my coach here at the University of Illinois, Adam Blakeney. And he will never tell any of us how to beat each other because, poor form as coach, but he will give us a plan to work together to give everyone the greatest chance of success. And it means putting yourself out there and taking risks and relying on your teammates to bring you back up. And by doing that, we were able to go 1, 2, 3 in the 1500. And then 3 days later went 1, 2, 3 again in the 5K. By relying on each other as teammates and working together, which was probably like the 2 coolest experiences of my athletic career.
Cool. Amy? Anything, Amy?
No, I don't really have much to add. I didn't stay at U of I for very long. And I did not get that experience. What I did was the girls that I had met during the traveling, that we didn't all live near each other, and we were all still in high school, but when we would travel, when we would be at the same competitions, it was, I had absolute trust and we could do that. But again, a little bit different, they weren't in the same classification as I was. So unless we got to those, longer distance races, then we could decide to work or not. But I really liked your answer, Amanda. That's good. Another reason to participate in college sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another. What advice would you give to girls to advocate for themselves? What methods have you found to be successful?
You want to take this one first?
I'm sorry, Cindy, can you repeat that?
Yeah. What advice would you give to girls to advocate for themselves? What methods have you found to be successful?
So to advocate, girls advocate, that confidence. You just have to ask tough questions. Look for the right people. If you're not getting the right answers, keep going up the ladder until you find somebody that will help you. And if you don't, look for friends. There's always going to be somebody there, or call me. I will help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you've got to put yourself out there and it's scary, but you know yourself better than anybody else does. And if something isn't working for you, if you're not happy with something, it's important to be able to feel like you can go to your coach, to go to your teammates, to go to whomever, even if it's a parent or a friend, someone that's not specifically related to sport, to have those tough conversations and tell them what you need and what needs to change, especially if it means the difference between walking away from sports and quitting or staying involved. a lot of times when stuff like that goes wrong, it's no one's intention to make you feel excluded, or to make you feel like you're not a part of the team. And sometimes just bringing it up, and just talking about the way that you feel about those things, or about things that need to change, can make a huge difference moving forward.
Okay. What mental tool do you use when you're under pressure? Or do you?
In competition wise, I always did breathing, always. The nasal breathing, it slows your heart rate, allows you to get more oxygen in, really helped me focus. I guess my way of doing some kind of meditation, maybe. But I would always do that right at the starting line, just slow my breathing down. And I do that with the kids too, that I coach. You know, that if they're starting to get worked up, that mouth breathing, especially when you're working out real heavy, can cause hyperventilation. It can trigger fight or flight. And so just to get that calming sense back, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and do that a few times over. And that always really helped me. So
I always try to remind myself that it's not that big of a deal. My worst races are always when I am too nervous and taking things too seriously and putting too much pressure on myself. So I try to step back and remind myself that, like, a race is a race is a race. Whether it goes well or terribly is no reflection on who I am as a person or my self-worth or the greater, like, trajectory of the value of my life. Just that, like, I'm there, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to have fun. I've put the time and the training and all of the effort in, and there is nothing more than I can do. I've got a plan and I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to work as hard as I can and try as hard as I can. And in a minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, however long the race is, it's going to be over. It might not go the way that I want it to. I might be a little bit disappointed, but that's just an opportunity for me to look back and see where I can improve, see what went wrong, and be better and stronger and more educated the next time that I find myself in that situation.
Focusing on the positive consequences, absolutely.
Okay, here's another question. What do you like best about being an athlete with a disability?
I don't know how to answer that. I guess just as an athlete, I would say I feel pride for having accomplished some of those things. I really like the fact that I was able to go through it at a young age and give back, because having done that gives me the experience to help the kids that I work with now. And I guess if I didn't have a disability, I wouldn't have such a connection to the kids that I do. And I really do enjoy that, kind of showing them, okay, this is what worked for me at that stage of my life. You know, maybe you can try this. So I guess I'm proud that I was able to find that. Nobody's ever asked that. Good question.
Good question.
I think as an athlete as well, just the experiences that being an athlete has given me, being able to travel, so many experiences that I don't think I would have had otherwise. And I also think that it's been a great opportunity to mentor, like Amy said, but also to educate about Paralympic sport, and show that power of inclusion, teach people that the sports are not all that different, that running and wheelchair racing, there's, like we were talking about before, with Amy coaching able-bodied athletes, that there's a huge amount of crossover there. There's a lot of things that able-bodied athletes and athletes with disabilities have in common. And particularly as a marathoner, working with the World Marathon Majors and some of these bigger events that are super inclusive to push for more media coverage, more attention, and more publicity to the wheelchair fields and the elite wheelchair athletes has been such a rewarding experience to watch that sport grow and to see how much bigger it's gotten just in the past 15 years since I've been competing internationally. Has been very, very cool. And it's been great to be a part of that movement and that education.
Okay, great. How have you both, Amy as a coach and Amanda as an athlete, how have you been able to motivate your athletes to stay active during COVID? Some which needs to be viral or virtual. And the other aspect is how have you stayed motivated, both of you, to stay active when, there's no meet scheduled virtually, pretty much this whole season?
I really enjoy the Zoom. I hope it's as motivating for the kids as it is for me. I think that accountability, when you can see them face to face, kind of check in, have those little inside jokes with them on a weekly basis, that's been really motivating for me, and I hope the kids too. And just encouraging them to check in, and you guys Glass offers how many virtual programs that you have told me yourself have seen multiple athletes on. So I think that the Zoom features offer a bit of social connection as well. And that's what's been motivating me for sure.
To be honest with all of you, I have been struggling with this a lot. And it's been really, really hard for me. Part of the reason why I've stayed at the University of Illinois for my entire career is because I really thrive off of that team training aspect. And I really thrive off of the structure and accountability that comes with showing up at 8 a.m. every day and going out on the road with 20 people and everything else that falls into that. I know that structure is important to me, and I know that it's difficult for me to create structure unless it is imposed from the outside, if that makes sense. And so when I finished school, I did great as a student athlete because you've got their structure. You go to practice in the morning, you've got classes in the afternoon, you have homework to do at night. And so I knew that in order to continue that path of success that I was on, it was really important for me to find ways to do that. And so I started working more deeply with the mentor program. I picked up a part-time job at a record label, and that way I had times and to keep myself on track throughout the day. And since working from home, training on my own, it's been really, really tough to make myself get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go out on the rollers in my garage by myself. And it's been something that I've been working on a lot, particularly for the past month or so. I've noticed myself falling off more and more and thinking like, oh, well, there's no races and I can just have another off day. But just talking to my teammates, talking to my coach on a regular basis and saying like, oh, this is what I'm going to do today. I'm getting up, I'm going to work out at 8, I'm going to have breakfast after that, then I'm going to sit outside and like work on whatever for a little while. Just saying that and telling someone has been really, really helpful for me from an accountability standpoint. But it has been really, really tough, especially as a marathoner, seeing all of the marathons moved and then rescheduled, and then eventually being canceled. It is tricky to stay motivated. So if
you reminded me of,
go ahead.
Sorry, you just reminded me of something else that I did. So one of my struggles was eating. I just, I'm home all the time and my kids are teenagers and they're starving every second. So what I did was I printed out a bunch of GIFs, just kind of funny, sarcastic ones, and I kind of put them on the fridge or around, so like some kind of visual cue maybe would help as well. Just a reminder, like, do you really need this right now? But maybe you could do something like that with your workouts and future goals too. Print out a picture of Tokyo or Paris, and say, okay, this is something, just so you have that visual every day that you're looking at as a reminder.
Okay, good idea. Where do you think both of your lives would be, or how would your lives be different without sport? I mean, have you ever thought about what that might look like without sport?
No.
So hard. That is such a hard question to answer because, like you, it's been such a big part of my life.
No. Yeah.
No, I can't even fathom. Even getting married and talking about having children, both my husband and I are from a very big sports background. And we said, okay, our kids are going to be involved in sport. I don't care if it's golf or football, something. They just have to do something to stay active. And I can't even fathom my life without it. So.
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea where I would even be. I know I wouldn't be in Illinois right now. I probably.
Why not?
Champaign, Illinois is everyone's dream destination. Absolutely. Maybe we're going to move anywhere in the country. Yeah, like I know that I wouldn't have ended up here. I assume that I probably would have gone to a university somewhere and gotten a degree in something, because that seems like the path that I was on regardless. I would not be planning on moving to Colorado. I wouldn't have been applying for jobs at the USOPC. Probably wouldn't have a master's degree. I wouldn't have done nearly the amount of traveling or met the interesting people or had the incredible experiences that I've had. So it's really hard to say.
And I think, Amanda, you just, the people, and just obviously I'm not an athlete, so I'm on the other side of it, but just on a personal level, the people that I've met have been amazing and continue to be amazing. And I think everybody is truly so encouraging, and it's such an environment that they want to do better. They want to learn more, and it's that passion that I know the panel's about both of you, but the whole aspect of adaptive sport is just, I just think it's so enlightening, and the passion and enthusiasm. And so I would just share that in regards to adaptive and Paralympic sports in general. I have another question, which is another interesting one. Have either of you experienced any sexism in your sport, and are you aware of racism in adaptive sports?
I have not. I think because we all have that unifying disability, and I did not have that in my regular life before adaptive sports. I don't want to say I didn't feel like I belonged. I did. I have a family, I had friends, I had a full life. But then coming into adaptive sports programming, I was able to meet somebody else, a stranger that I already connected with without even speaking to them. I didn't see people like me ever before I met Cindy. You don't open up a magazine and see somebody in a wheelchair. At least you didn't when I was growing up. Now, Target even has ads, which is really nice. But I think because of that factor that we already have something in common, it wasn't anywhere. No sexism, no racism that I was ever in contact with. What about you, Amanda?
So I do agree with Amy that I think that we're coming into this with a unifying characteristic of being from a minority group, being people with disabilities. But I also think too, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, with there just being fewer women involved in sports as a whole. I think that in track and field as an individual sport, and also a sport that has a strong female population, there's a little bit less. But I have definitely had people make comments to me that like, oh, there's only 15 women in the elite wheelchair field versus 45 men. It's so much easier to be a female marathoner. Arguing that the women's field didn't deserve as much prize money as the men did because there were more men, and the men were going faster than the women are. And that if this person was a woman, then they would definitely be a gold medalist, despite the fact that as a male athlete, they weren't even making teams. So I think that those things are said, and I think sometimes the people saying them don't necessarily realize the impact that can have, or the sexism that is implied there. I also think that, and this is a problem with adaptive sports as a whole, I think that there is an implicit bias that favors people that come from more from wealthier backgrounds, from higher SES levels. There's a huge learning curve getting involved in adaptive athletics. The equipment is expensive and programs are spread out. And so unless you are close to a program that is really supportive, that can provide transportation, that like GLASA has funds for adaptive equipment, and can give you the opportunity to try things, it's really, really difficult to get involved. And this is even, I was really fortunate as a kid because my dad owned a small business and he was able to make his own hours. And so when I was 11, 12, 13, before I was traveling on my own, I was able to take that time off. And also I was fortunate that they had the resources to be able to buy me racing chairs and to take the time off of work. They had the money that they could travel to these events that were all over the country. And being a part of a program that started in Philadelphia, where a lot of kids there didn't have those supportive families, came from single parent households, or perhaps just didn't have the financial resources to be able to purchase that equipment and to travel, I saw a lot of them not be able to carry on with sports. And so I definitely think that it favors people that come from backgrounds that are more fortunate that way.
Okay, I think we're pretty much getting wrapping up. I'm just going to check one more question. Okay. Just in general, for both of you, last question before we wrap up, just what type of advice would you give up and coming girls in whatever sports? Because looking at who's on here, you know, we have girls with various sports here. So just any last, you know, advice.
Stay hungry.
That is a great piece of advice.
We talked about, Amy and I talked about this a little bit earlier this week, to trust in the process and not get frustrated. It's going to be, sometimes it's slow and sometimes you're putting in the work and you're not seeing those results and it's easy to get frustrated. And if you were looking at where you are now versus where you need to be to make a team and you're watching those standards get hard, those times keep falling, it's easy to get discouraged looking at this huge picture and feeling like you've got a long way to go. But all of us started out at that same point. And we just kept chipping away, kept working, and you'll get there. If you put the time in, you'll start to see those successes. And also on the flip side of that, if you are working really hard and you are doing everything that you can, and you don't make it to the Paralympic Games or you don't win a medal, that doesn't mean that you're a failure. That doesn't mean that you wasted your time, or that you didn't find success, because there are so many other incredible experiences that come out of being an athlete that just go beyond being able to walk away someday and be like, oh, well, I won a medal, so that's great, and I'm successful now. It's great and it's wonderful, and it's easy for me to say as a Paralympic medalist that it's not that big of a deal. But that's not what I'm going to remember in 25 years.
Well,
I will, but there's going to be so much more that came from like my experiences of being an athlete than just like going to the games and winning a medal.
Yeah. No, and to elaborate a little bit off of what Amanda said, you know, that those goals, set little goals, you know, that are obtainable, that you can check off as you're stepping there to help get through those rough times. And make sure you're setting appropriate goals. You know, don't make them tangible. You know, consistency can be a goal.
Yep.
Improving on your form or making it to practices on a normal basis. Any small thing like that could be a goal, and helping check those off, you will definitely see improvement.
Going to bed early, not eating junk food, like all of those things. Being an athlete is so much more than just showing up at practice. There are so many, it affects every aspect of your life, making sure you're getting enough rest, you're getting enough nutrition, managing your stress levels, getting all of your schoolwork done, or if you have a job, and all of those things go into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both. Really appreciate you both being on the panel. And I know so do our attendees. So this is the last virtual session of our Great Lakes Games. So I think speaking for everybody, we're all looking forward to kind of being outside. But as Amy, has pointed out too, it's been wonderful to meet new people on our Zoom session and new athletes too, which we never would have done without this. So I think it's been a win-win. So we'll end the meeting and, oh, hold on guys, one more question. Shoot, let me. Oh, Gabby says to both of you, thank you to both of you. So
Yeah,
thanks,
thank
Gabby. All right, guys, we'll end it and we'll see you both soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.